This stuff's changing, as we know, on an almost weekly basis, if not daily basis, right? So we have a team of lawyers here that are monitoring all of those changes. As we provide those quarterly updates, we're actually giving a forward look and letting our subscribers know what's coming, when do you have to comply by, and that's all being published as part of those quarterly updates. With that being said, though, you need to then evolve your program based on those updates that are being made. So actually, one of the things that was actually a joint request that came from some folks that we're working with at ServiceNow, coupled with one of our large healthcare providers, who said, we need a tool in order to go kind of manage all of those regulatory changes. So what we've done is that we built a workflow capability with ServiceNow called our regulatory change management application. That is one of those things on the store that you can purchase and subscribe to. And this is a whole kind of closed loop workflow that will allow you to then determine how you want to treat the retiring or the addition of new laws, regs, and frameworks. So let's use an example, right? So if we were, as of Q4 or the second half of last year, if an organization had everything set up based on kind of the current set of obligations that they had, but then as of January, everyone has to comply with CCPA. Right. So CCPA now is a new source that needs to be then kind of added to everyone's framework and set of requirements. You would use this reg change application to then, add in a new source, CCPA. For those of you who've gotten into privacy, GDPR and CCPA, although both privacy are actually slightly different animals, so you'll need to go through an entire treatment process to determine what are my impacts to my policies, to my standards, to my baseline controls and actual controls based on the changes of the requirements coming from CCPA. So this is a whole kind of closed loop workflow process, assign tickets and owners for people to go make updates to the material that's, appropriate, to them. With that though, what we do want to quickly show is I'm going to turn it over to Will Matthias, who is one of our lead architects, and he's going to take the reins for a quick minute here and actually show you what that looks like. And he'll spend 3 to 5 minutes just bringing that to life a little bit.
Thank you, Brian. So I want to start by showing the authority documents that we were talking about. So when we get content, what we're going to provide is the authority document records and the citations and the control objectives. And these are going to be targeted for the different industries that those content packs are targeted at. Give me an example of an authority document. Basically, we're going to include all sorts of details and break down these citations specifically into elements that can then be mapped to a control objective. So these control objectives are going to be manageable and be able to provide the controls for the different applications and entities. Now, in terms of the regulatory change management application, the way that is managed is through campaigns. You could create a brand new campaign. The first step is to select the sources. In my example here, this is for someone who has never seen the PCI. They haven't added it yet. So when they run this campaign, it's going to go through that list of authority documents. It's going to identify what doesn't already exist in their authority documents from our library, and it's going to select that that's a new one and allow them to choose what kind of activity they want to do. So you could look at this and you could get some information to decide whether this is something you want to add. And then you could decide what treatment. Also, you can look at the existing library elements by doing show all. So this is showing not just the new values or what you've decided to add, but is showing all of the things that may have no changes that you might want to retire and replace with a new one. there's an approval process that this goes through. So this first stage, when you're doing the source selection, will go through an approval group. And with their approval, it'll move into the next stage, which is updating the guidance. So now what's happened is the authority documents and citations have been copied over, but the control objectives have not been added yet. And instead, what we've done is created tasks, and adding PCI has created 89 potential impacts on control objectives. So it's created these tasks for review. We're going to look at one, the two-factor authentication. And with that, we're going to be able to see that there was a baseline that was there previously, and we can modify that baseline to reflect the new source change. We also will be able to see what a baseline test procedure and a modified test procedure would look like. When we're looking at this, we will be given a list of all the citations that affect that control objective. So not only is this affecting the PCI that was just added, but it's showing that there were some previous citations, authority documents, that were impacting this control objective that we need to consider as well. And that helps us to draft this baseline and make a decision about whether we think that this is a material change. Has adding this authority source required enough of a change that the control owners need to be involved? And we can say that, yes, they should be aware that there was a change, but it can be handled as part of the normal control review process, or we can actually go in and require an immediate review of the control. If we choose the immediate review process, that will create these control review tasks. So again, we were looking at the two-factor authentication. In this example, we just had two applications that were impacted, and someone can go in and look at that. And now at the control level, they can set baselines for the actual control and the actual test procedure. And then there is a second approval process that will allow that to get approved. Ultimately, as you work through all of these stages with these different campaigns, you will be able to see a log of all the changes. So authority documents and citations that were moved in, a policy statement change, or a change to an actual control. And you'll have a log of all those along with the approvals.